Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I could not agree more with your opening statement, Chairman Grassley, that the administration has mishandled family separation, and in some ways I'd say we sit here now in the middle of a humanitarian crisis, largely of the Trump administration's creation. The zero-tolerance policy has led to the separation of thousands of children, including infants and toddlers, from their parents, and has intentionally inflicted untold amounts of human suffering. As a father and a person of faith, I find this policy unconscionable, and the administration's efforts so far to reunite children with their families, sadly, inadequate. I'm frustrated that despite repeated inquiries across a broad range of senators and congressmen and women, we've not been able to get timely, full, and accurate information about the process and about where we stand. So first, Mr. Chairman, Senator Langford and I have joined with a dozen of our colleagues, 14 members, 7 Republicans, 7 Democrats, to request information. This is a letter we're sending to Attorney General Sessions, to Secretary Nielsen, and to Secretary Azar, just asking for basic details and regular updates on what are the facts, how many children, what ages, where being detained, where being reunited, on what timeline. I'd like to enter this for the record, if I might, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection, so ordered.
And could each of the 5 of you simply say yes or no? Are you committed to getting timely responses to Congress in response to broad and bipartisan requests for relevant information about our progress towards resolving this separation situation?
Yes, Senator, I will take this back, and we will work on getting that information to you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Albans. Commander White?
Yes, of course.
Thank you, Mr.
Yep.
McHenry.
Likewise, we'll take it back and see what we can provide.
Ma'am?
Yes, Senator.
There are some disturbing reports in the press that individuals who are seeking asylum have been misinformed or even misled to give up their legal claims to try and get their children back. An American Immigration Council attorney testified that there are dozens of individuals that had been interviewed who felt, and I'm quoting, coerced into relinquishing their rights, or who appeared totally unaware that they had done so. Some who were even adamant that the paper they had signed was one that allowed them to choose to be reunited with their children, when in fact the form they signed had the opposite effect. Mr. Albans, could you produce to me and my staff copies of the forms that ICE has been giving to parents over the last 3 months?
We have the form that was as part of the Ms. L case that the ACLU developed and approved by the court, that we could certainly give you a copy of that one.
That'd be helpful, because there's a lot of stories, both sides, assertions, both sides, that these are folks who are well-informed and who are making a responsible decision to return to their countries of origin and leave their children here. And there's some very disturbing reporting that the opposite is the case. Mr. Albans, are parents given the opportunity to consult with a lawyer and their children before they sign a form waiving their legal rights to be reunited with their children?
As required in the Ms. L case and utilizing the form we discussed, there is a 48-hour waiting period in which the individual is allowed to contact an attorney. You may contact the ACLU. We have signs posted in our detention facilities which advise them of that right and the way to do so. It even allows individuals who are not actually members of the class to still make that contact if they do so desire.
Are they able to contact their children?
They do have contact with their children. Whether they choose to do so at this time and ask their child their opinion, I can't speak to that, but they do have regular contact with their children that are in ORR facilities.
Because one of my concerns, Commander White, has been reporting that strongly suggests that children and parents who are separated, in some cases by thousands of miles, don't have a chance to communicate before parents are forced to return to their country of origin, leaving the children bewildered as to what's happened to their parents. Is that the case?
So, sir, let me let you know, first of all, what we do to provide contact with family members to children, and second, about the mental health supports we have with children to cope with this situation, because it sounds like your question touches on both. So first, every child in ORR care within 48 hours of arrival is given the chance to call family members either in the United States or in home country. They're also allowed a minimum of 2 phone calls a week, and many children get significantly more than that. Obviously, parents who are currently in detention status are harder to call in some cases than people who have a cell phone because they're at liberty. But there has been strong collaboration between ICE and HHS to do that. As we sent our field teams, our 200-strong field teams, to ICE detention centers to interview parents, part of what they did was, in the course of interviewing parents, they also would promote telephonic contact between parent and child right then. So we are doing what we can to have children in contact with parents. But second, I think the second part of your question is really important, which is in the middle of this are children of every age from infancy up until the day before their 18th birthday. Every child in our care has a mental health clinician. There's a 12-to-1 client to clinician ratio. So every single child, whether separated or traditional UAC, has a mental health clinician they see regularly. And part of what we are leveraging in the fact that this is a program designed to support children who've experienced traumas is that we are getting the mental health supports also to cope with the uncertainties of this situation for those who've been separated.
Thank you, Commander White. Let me just two more things before I conclude. Senators Langford and I joined Senators Bennett and Collins in a letter urging the administration to work with the faith community proactively in efforts to reunify families. I'm concerned by reports I'm getting that faith-based groups that are willing and able to provide support for reunification are getting little or no notice before being asked to provide support to hundreds of families. These are organizations that stand ready to help. Can you give them more information, more timely information or notice about when and where families will be released so that they can get the support services that will allow them to make the post-trauma transitions you're talking about?
So the specific release piece is actually ISIS, but let me clarify this. The compressed time frame required by the court required us first to do something we've never done before, which is reunification of minors with children in ICE detention, and second, to do it under an incredibly compressed time frame. And we achieved that for the eligible minors. This had the effect of meaning that children and parents are being reunified high speed. That is why those who work for Mr. Albans and the people on my team were working 24/7. It's why for 30 days I worked 18 hours a day. We were doing everything that we could to move these children as quickly as we could. The two NGOs who worked with ICE to provide safe entry into communities for released parents, we did what we could to facilitate giving them that time frame to provide that assistance. But this was a consequence of the size and speed of this reunification effort.
Well, and I'll say in closing that the entire process is, I think, a consequence of the Trump administration having implemented a cruel policy of intentionally separating families without a coherent plan in place in advance for reuniting them. And I respect and appreciate the very hard work you've all gone through to comply with the court order, but it seems clear to me from what I've heard in this hearing that there wasn't sufficient thought given in advance to what would happen in terms of reuniting children and their parents were this policy reversed. This is, I think, the third immigration crisis that's been created by this administration, the travel ban, ending DACA, and the zero tolerance policy. I'm looking for updates from this administration until the number of children forcibly separated from their parents returns to zero. And it's my hope on a bipartisan basis we can move to resolve the underlying legal and framework issues that make immigration such a difficult issue for all of us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.